someone who's planning a trip to Puerto Escondido, then YouTube did an amazing job in recommending this video to you. I recently just returned to Canada after spending 2 months in Puerto Escondido, which is why in this video, I'll be sharing with you guys 10 things that you should know about this tropical beach town located on the Pacific coast of Mexico. Regardless of whether if you're a short-term traveler, backpacker, or a digital nomad, this video is guaranteed to provide you with tons of valuable information that will help you in planning your trip. And for those of you guys who don't know me, which is probably all of you, my name is Pran Narang and I'm a travel filmmaker based out of Canada, and through the means of this YouTube channel, I like to share my travel experiences, vlogs, as well as tips and tricks on how to edit better videos. I've already posted a bunch of vlogs on this channel about Puerto Escondido, so after watching this video, feel free to go and check those out as well. The first thing we're going to talk about is that Puerto Escondido is one of the best surf destinations in the entire world. Playa Zicatela, which is actually one of the main beaches in Puerto Escondido, has some of the highest waves in all of Mexico, with rights and lefts up to 20 feet. There's a reason why this town is recognized as Mexico's pipeline, because it provides perfect waves all throughout the year for surfing. And it's also a great place for beginners to learn how to surf, because there's affordable surfing lessons offered all throughout the town, ranging from anywhere between 550 to 700 pesos for a 2-hour lesson plus board rental. If anyone's charging you more than that though, you're probably getting ripped off. So the next thing that I want to talk about is safety at beaches. Not all beaches in Puerto Escondido are safe to swim in, especially Zicatela. Although it is a great spot for surfing, the powerful waves here could be deadly if you're not a strong swimmer or a pro surfer.
So I'm not gonna lie, the waves are a little bit rough, not exactly swimmable, but that does not stop me.
Another beach that I wouldn't recommend for swimming is Zipolite. Although Zipolite is a different beach town about an hour away from Puerto Escondido, it's still a popular destination to visit amongst travelers, along with Mazunte, because of the laid-back and hippie vibes these towns offer. I've actually already made a full video about Mazunte and Zipolite. I will leave a link to that in the description in case if you guys want to check that out. There's been at least 10 cases of people drowning at these beaches in the last 12 months. So again, be very careful if you do decide to go in for a swim. Playa Carrizalillo, La Punta, and Manzanillo are the beaches you'd want to hang out at if you safely want to be able to swim. The waves at these beaches are a lot calmer on most days, making it safe for swimming as well as for beginner surfers. Not to mention, Playa Carrizalillo is also one of the most beautiful beaches in Puerto Escondido. So the next thing that I want to talk about is limited access. While Puerto Escondido is now starting to become a popular destination amongst travelers, it's still not fully developed, so don't expect to find any big chains and stores around there. Most of what you'll find out there will be small shops and vendors selling local food, clothes, and accessories on the side of the street. If you're going to be staying there for a while, I'd suggest bringing extras of things that you rely on heavily that might be hard to replace in case if you lose them or if you just simply run out. If there's any specific branded products that you like to use, there's a high chance that you won't be able to find them out there, so make sure you're fully equipped before you travel. There's only 2 big supermarkets in the entire town, but there's dozens of Oxxos where you can buy most of your daily essentials as well as alcohol. So the next thing that I want to talk about is internet. If you're a digital nomad, or if you're just someone who's working remotely and your job heavily relies on fast internet, then Puerto Escondido unfortunately might not be the right place for you. The internet in Puerto Escondido is always a hit or miss, and is simply never fast enough for things like uploading, streaming, and downloading. Out of the 2 months that I was there were at least 6 full days where the entire town lost access to internet as well as cellular coverage. Not gonna lie though, it was kinda nice because we went back to those traditional means of communication which we're not really familiar with anymore. So the only way for me to be able to get in touch with my friends wasn't through calling them or texting them, but in fact I actually had to show up at their doorstep. And trust me, this is exactly what we were doing on days when we didn't have our phones working. In my opinion, there's only one place in Puerto Escondido that has reliable internet, and that is the Selena hostel located on the Zicatela strip. The good thing is though that you don't have to be staying there to be able to use their facility. You can simply just order something at their restaurant or cafe and have unlimited access to decent internet all day, and that's pretty much how I was getting most of my work done. Other than the time that I would be at my hostel or hanging out with my friends, when I'd be working during the day, I would always be hanging out at the Amarisa Cafe, which is the name of the cafe inside Selena, or like their restaurant. You know, I also made like a tons of friends like just hanging out over there, and that's another thing you'll notice when you go to their cafe or their restaurant. You'll see like a lot of like young people just working on their computers, just again because that is like the only place with good Wi-Fi. So most people that are working during the day like to go there and, you know, get their things done. Alternatively, if you prefer to work in a quieter space, you can consider getting a membership to one of the co-working spaces in the area. I don't know too much about those just because I was getting most of my work done at Selena. That was enough for me, but they cost around 100 to 200 pesos per day, and I've heard they have pretty good Wi-Fi. There's one place called Losa Deli. It's a co-working space located between Zicatela and Centro. I haven't been there myself, but I've had quite a few friends who told me that they have good Wi-Fi and the vibes in there are pretty chill. So that's one spot you can consider looking into. What you'll also find is that a lot of hostels and hotels will advertise that they have good Wi-Fi, but is it really reliable? Well, I guess you'll find out when you go there. Alright, so next up I want to talk about transportation. Puerto Escondido is fairly spread out, so walking really isn't the best option, especially because of how hot and humid it is out there. The most convenient way to get around town is through taxis, which are easily available, run 24/7, and are also pretty affordable. It usually doesn't cost more than 50 pesos to get from one end of town to another. But if you're going to be staying there for a long time, it might be better to just rent a scooter instead of taking taxis every day. Scooter rental on average would cost you about 1800 pesos per week, or about 300 pesos per day. The longer you rent it for, the cheaper it gets. The only other thing you'd have to pay for on top of that would be gas. Gas, surprisingly, is pretty affordable in Puerto Escondido. To fill up an entire tank for the scooter would cost me around 70 pesos, which is really cheap. The other thing to keep in mind is that most scooter rental places won't offer you any kind of insurance. So if you get in an accident or if your scooter gets stolen, you'll be responsible to pay for the full cost of the vehicle. Also, make sure to inspect the scooter for any pre-existing damage before you drive it away. Alternatively, you can also take a collectivo, which is like a local bus that runs up and down the main road, and you can flag one down quite easily just by walking up to the road, and it only costs 8 pesos for a single fare. So definitely the most affordable option out there. So next thing that I want to talk about is tourist camps. Guys, be very careful of tourist camps. I know quite a few people, including me and my friend, who almost got scammed in Puerto Escondido. One evening I was riding on the scooter with my friend on the Zicatela strip, and we got pulled over by these two men that were driving a random pickup truck and wearing shirts that were far from a police uniform. After pulling us over, they told us that we were driving in the wrong direction on a one-way street, when in fact we were actually going in the same direction as the rest of the traffic. They didn't speak any English, and we had a very basic understanding of Spanish, so it was really hard for us to understand what they really wanted. But basically what they were trying to say is that we're gonna have to go to the police station with them just because we were driving on the wrong side of the street. And to me, that just seemed so unnecessary. I mean, even if we were driving on the wrong side of the street, which we weren't, by the way, taking us to the police station for that was just a little too much. So because of everything that I just described, this whole situation just seemed very suspicious to me. So I asked them to show me some kind of an ID or a badge that could identify them as cops. One of the guys showed me an ID that basically said that he worked for the Tourism Board of Oaxaca and had nothing on him that could identify him as a real cop. The other guy was simply wearing a blue shirt that had Policia written on it, and when I asked him for an ID or a badge, all he did was pointed me at his shirt and reiterated the words Policia. I'm like, I see that it says Policia. Just because you were wearing a shirt that says Policia on it doesn't make you a cop. I mean, I could go out and wear a shirt that says Policia on it. That doesn't make me a cop. At this point, it was pretty clear to us that there was something fishy going on, so in hopes to scare them off, what I started doing was I started taking pictures of them as well as the truck they were driving on my phone, because I thought that this would like sort of signal them that we're on to them and we're not really like buying into this whole thing that was going on. But in fact, this actually made them get more aggressive with us. So at this point, one of the guys, he started to like grab the scooter keys from my friend, and my friend was basically just like moving further and further away from them. And this wasn't even a conversation, this was more of an argument. Our voices were pretty raised, and we weren't just gonna like hand them the scooter keys because, I mean, they had no way of proving they were real cops. And because their voices were so raised, there were some other tourists that were like walking down the street, and they kind of figured that we needed help, so they stepped in and they asked us if we were doing okay, and we briefly just explained to them what was going on. And then these guys actually took over this whole conversation for us, and luckily these guys actually spoke and understood Spanish pretty well, so they were the ones who were talking to these so-called cops. And after talking to them for a couple minutes, they like looked back at us and they basically confirmed that they weren't real police. And then these guys threatened to call the actual police on them if they didn't leave us alone. And that's really when these cons decided that, you know, it's time for them to leave, so they got back in their trucks and were on their way. So the moral of the story is, guys, that these kind of things happen quite frequently, especially if you don't speak the language, if you're alone, or if you're just too easy to spot as a tourist. So if you're ever in a situation where you're just unsure of what's going on, do not hesitate to ask for help from people around you. Now let's talk about prices. Puerto Escondido is cheaper compared to most other touristy places in Mexico, but if you were to be staying in areas like La Punta or Zicatela, which are the two most popular areas amongst travelers, the prices of food and drinks are going to be significantly higher compared to Centro. Centro is the part of the town where locals live, so if you're someone who's on a tighter budget, I would consider staying in Centro, or at least buying some of your meals out there so you can save up some money. You can easily find tacos and your typical Mexican food in Centro for about 50 pesos or even less, whereas in Zicatela, the cheapest I ever paid for tacos was about 70 pesos, or if you were to go to any of the restaurants along the beach, you'd be paying at least 150 to 200 pesos per meal, and even more if you were to get a drink on the side. And for drink prices, for a beer on average you'd be paying about 40 to 50 pesos at a bar, or about 25 pesos if you were to get your beers at OXXO. And when it comes to cocktails, you're looking at paying about 100 to 200 pesos depending on how fancy of a bar you're in. Definitely not cheap, but also not super expensive. I'm not saying that every single restaurant in Zicatela or La Punta is expensive. That's definitely not the case. There's some really good options out there which are pretty affordable and offer really good value for your money. One of them is actually Cafecito. That's one of my favorite restaurants for breakfast and lunch, located right on the Zicatela strip, and you'd still be paying about 80 to 120 pesos for a meal, but it's really good food. They have a lot of options on their menu, and you do get a lot of value out of it because the portion sizes are pretty decent. And another spot that I'd recommend is Spirulina, which is mostly a vegetarian restaurant, but they have a few non-vegetarian options on the menu as well. You're gonna be paying at least about 100 to 120 pesos per menu item, but the food is delicioso. Anyway, let's get to the next point. Next up is making sure you bring enough cash with you. Most stores and restaurants in Puerto Escondido do not accept credit cards, and the ones that do would charge you a 4% surcharge on top of your total bill. So if you're staying there for a while, it could really add up if you have to pay an extra 4%, you know, every single time. The other thing is that US dollars are not accepted out there, so make sure you're bringing enough pesos and not any other currency. I know there's some places in Mexico where you can pay with both USD and pesos. That's just not the case in Puerto Escondido. So the next thing that I want to talk about now is sunsets. Now this isn't something that I would normally talk about in a video when I'm just making a video on things that you should be knowing about a place. But guys, one of the reasons why I love Puerto Escondido so much is because of the sunset. You will watch some of the most incredible sunsets of your life while you're in Puerto Escondido. Like, the sunsets out there are literally out of this world. So I want to give you guys two of my favorite spot recommendations to catch the most epic sunsets. One of them is Playa Coral and the other one is La Punta. Both of them are beaches, and I actually slightly prefer Playa Coral over La Punta just because there's usually less crowds out there and the view is a little bit better, but regardless, you could go to either one of these spots and your mind will be blown, guaranteed. It's just the perfect way to kick off the night. Friends, sunset beers, and some tunes. Doesn't get any better than that. Last but not the least, what I want to talk about now is language. Guys, if you're going to be traveling out to Puerto Escondido, make sure you learn at least a little bit of Spanish, because it is gonna be so hard for you to get by if you have no understanding of Spanish whatsoever. Which was actually, in my case, I had no understanding of Spanish, but luckily for me, I had some friends who were pretty fluent in Spanish, so most of the time I was with them, so I was able to get by just with a little to no understanding of the language. But unlike Cancun and other places, like, locals out here in Puerto Escondido do not speak English, so just be prepared for that. Make sure you know some of the basics. And guys, with that, I'm gonna wrap up this video right here. I really hope I was able to provide you with some valuable information about Puerto Escondido, and if there's anything that I've missed or if you have any questions at all, you can always drop those down in the comments below. Alternatively, if you want a faster reply, you can also shoot me a DM on Instagram, which I'll include in the description below as well. Plug. Peace out.